Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Djellab channel. I hope you guys are doing very well. As you can see, joining me today, my maid in honour, Patrick Van Straten. How you doing?
Your maid in honour. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, man. Sorry, I'm like reeling from that intro. Yeah, I'm very well. It's good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you. I like this. This is very nice.
Thank you.
This
is a wife purchase.
A wife purchase. Well, she's done very well. Well done, Emma. Jay, welcome to the channel, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited. It's nice to see the both of you. It's lovely to see you in person, Zach. Nice to meet you, Pat. And it is a lovely shirt.
All right.
This
well
is
done,
too
Emma.
much.
Yeah. Let's keep it down.
As you guys can see by the title of this video, we're going to be talking about the rest of this season and predicting all the outcomes from the Champions League, the Premier League, the Championship, the Relegation, and also a few other leagues as well. But just before we get into that, it's not a sponsor for this video. It's a plug for myself. Guys, I'm running the London Marathon in about 2 weeks' time, roughly. And I would love it if you guys at home could donate. However much it will be going to a great cause. It's called the Make Some Noise Foundation. They basically are a bigger charity run by Global who give a lot of other charities, a lot smaller charities who don't get kind of access to these kind of funds throughout the year. They're really, really good. I'm running for them on the 21st of April. It's going to be tough. 42k is a lot of kilometres, 26 miles. I'm trying to aim for about 4:30. If you guys are coming to the London Marathon to support people, if you see me, please say hello. I will need it. But guys, please, it'll be in the description. Check it out. And I really do appreciate it. Okay, guys, let's get on to the football. We'll start it off with probably the biggest talking point, the one that everyone wants to know, the title race. Now, we're filming this on a Thursday, so there are, I think, 2 more games left to be played. Liverpool, Sheffield United, Chelsea versus Manchester United. Yesterday, we saw Man City dominate Aston Villa in the end without Erling Haaland, without Kevin De Bruyne. They won 4-1. And we also saw Arsenal get the win as well, 2-0 against a very tough Luton side. That was a coffee machine, I think, in the background going on. Patrick Van Straten, if I went to you right now, who will win the Premier League? It currently goes Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, all within about a point of each other. What would you say?
Liverpool. I think Liverpool are going to do it. Liverpool have got the points advantage, assuming that they win in the game that is going to be played tonight, but would have been played like 3 days ago by the time you watch this. Yeah, I just think that they've got the easiest schedule left, or as easy a schedule as Manchester City. And while I think they're easily the weakest of these 3 sides, they are still way, way, way better than the rest of the league. They're going to be heavy favourites in every one of those games. And I just think that Klopp will say to them, like, guys, we need 8 wins, and that's it. And and I do sort of back Liverpool in those moments to get the job done. I know that sounds like kind of weird, like there's not a lot of evidence behind that I'm bringing up, but I just think we're now so close to the end of the season. All the games that maybe they should have drawn or should have lost when actually they got the points, those games are past now. And unless they slip up against Man United, which I don't really see happening, I just think that it's going to be kind of a walk to the end of the season, helped by the fact that they're in the Europa League, not the Champions League, and they can afford to devote their resources to this. Arsenal and Manchester City have got to split their resources between those 2 competitions. Liverpool could afford to basically focus on this one.
Well, Jay, looking at the games they've got left, they've got Manchester United, Crystal Palace, obviously, as I said, Sheffield United on Thursday, which we assume they'll win. It'd be very crazy if we're saying this when the video goes out and they've lost to Sheffield United. Manchester United, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Everton, West Ham, Spurs, which isn't the easiest of games, that is at Anfield, Aston Villa and Wolves on the final day of the season. Yeah. It does look like they've got kind of, the best games remaining out of the 3. How do you feel this will end up?
I think Liverpool are going to come out on top. We were saying just before we recorded, actually, that perhaps Arsenal are the best team in the league. City are maybe the hardest to beat on their day, but Liverpool have something that this Arsenal team I don't think has just yet, which is the sense that in the opposition team, you're already beaten sometimes when you play Liverpool because you just know how tough it's going to be because they've proven it time and time again. Arsenal, I think, will get there next season, maybe the season after. Man City have it too, but just being that step behind Liverpool, I think, is too much. And yeah, looking at their fixtures, I can't see anywhere they're going to trip up. I think Spurs is a tough game, but at Anfield, you don't lose at Anfield, really, if you're a Liverpool player. So I think it's got Liverpool's name written on it, to be honest, and there's going to be big parades in Liverpool when they win that. So yeah, I think Liverpool are likely to come out on top. Maybe we'll get onto it later, but I'm quietly confident for Arsenal in the Champions League. But
Okay.
yeah, I think I have them as an outside favourite, but Liverpool for the Premier League for sure.
Well, we will get on to the Champions League. I don't know, lads. Like, there's something about me for when I've watched Liverpool this season. I know they do manage to get it over the line as well. They get the wins somehow. They make losses possibly into draws when it's needed as well. Obviously, they have 7 draws so far this season. Only lost 2 games all campaign, but I just wonder if one of those games, like we already saw them lose to Manchester United at Old Trafford in the FA Cup, that knocked them out. That will probably also spur them on as well to make sure it doesn't happen this time. Spurs, third last game of the season is not an easy game. This is a Spurs side that wants to be making sure they can guarantee a Champions League space as well. Wolves isn't easy. Aston Villa's not easy. Like Fulham, okay, they just got dismantled by Nottingham Forest. Yeah. But depending on what day Fulham turn up on, like they're not an easy side to play against either.
But doesn't this all apply to the other teams? Like the thing is, like Liverpool have Spurs, but they have Spurs at Anfield. Arsenal have to go away to Spurs.
Yeah.
Liverpool have United, but Arsenal have United. Liverpool have Villa, but Arsenal have Villa.
Yeah, that is very true.
It's not. I agree that there are potential banana skins here, but I just think that every team has those and Liverpool have the points advantage.
But do you not back, like for instance, I feel like those ones that we mention, maybe not Spurs, but all the other ones, I back Arsenal more so to get 3 points from those games. Like it wouldn't shock me if Liverpool went and drew to Villa, went and drew to Spurs, and also drew to United.
But you're talking about marginal differences here. Like, so say Arsenal, like
if you win the Premier League,
it is over the course of a season. But in these games, what I'm talking about is that, okay, during the days when Real Madrid and Barcelona were comfortably the 2 best teams in La Liga, like way better than everybody else, in a way, it didn't matter which one was slightly better than the other because both of them were so much better than the rest of the league that they were going to basically beat all those sides. So let's say that Arsenal are like, an 80% favourite in a game against Wolves and Liverpool are a 70% favourite in a game against Wolves. That still makes Liverpool huge favourites in that game. If you played it 100 times, you'd expect Arsenal to win more. You'd expect them to win 80 and Liverpool to win 70. But you play that game with a few games left to the end of the season and a chance to win the title, they are still overwhelmingly better than those sides. I think there's a really good argument that these are the 3 best sides in Europe now. Top of the Premier League.
Yeah.
I know that people in the comments are always going to be like, "Oh, Premier League bias," but I mean, I do just think that that's like quite clearly the case. I don't think Real Madrid have been very good this season.
Yeah, true. Well, we'll get on to a little bit about that later on as well. Jay, is there not a thing though where like I feel like every year it gets to this point and we go, Man City have like stumbled a little bit. This is what the classic run in, and then they go and win 8 games in a row, and suddenly they're top of the Premier League and have won it by 4 points.
Yeah. That happens consistently, but I think focusing back on Liverpool is that 2 players specifically, Van Dijk and Mo Salah, I think are so good at this point that it's obviously not going to last forever. This Liverpool daydream, this Klopp daydream that they've been enjoying for the last decade is that bubble's going to burst very soon. City, of course, have De Bruyne, Haaland, Foden, hat-trick last night as of recording. Every team has these outstanding players, this outstanding squad, and I think that just the fact that Liverpool are in a slightly advantageous position, it's a league of, as Pat said, basically 20 banana skins. You can trip up anywhere. That's the quality of the league. I think that Salah is inevitable. I think Van Dijk even more so. And the Klopp system seems at this point so finessed that they might just see it out. And I think every other team is going to have to regroup in the summer.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it would be Liverpool definitely having to regroup. We actually might do that next week, covering the how to replace Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool scenario. What do you think about Man City then this season, Pat? Because is it a bad season if they don't win the Premier League, but they could still possibly get close to 90 points?
It's not a bad season. Like this is the thing. When you say they could win all their remaining games, they could. They could finish on 91 points, and Arsenal could finish on 92, and Liverpool could finish on 94. like that's completely possible. It's relatively unlikely, but that's completely possible. I mean, I do still think it's a bad season in that if you look at all their underlying numbers, there's been a significant drop off. Like in the past, and when I say in the past, I mean like the past 4 or 5 years. City have always been the best team in the league by the underlying numbers by the end of the season. Even in the season that Liverpool won the league by miles, City's numbers were by far the best. And that's just not the case this year. Arsenal's are better, and the difference between City and Arsenal is kind of the difference between City and Liverpool. it's not like just a totally marginal thing. Like, they are not the best team by a significant difference. And that's something we haven't really seen from a Pep side before. And it does feel like there are personnel issues to be ironed out. Like, whether it's Doku becoming kind of fully aligned with the kind of Pep machine, whether it's having a fully fit Grealish all year. Haaland does look a little bit out of sorts. Like, he's still obviously one of the best strikers in the world.
What do you think about the Roy Keane's League Two comment? He's a League Two striker. Obviously, he's very much over-exaggerating, but...
What was that based on? Was that based on the video and the training?
Well, no, it was based more so on the Arsenal versus Man City.
It's the miss kick, right? The miss kick against Arsenal, I think, is when he bought. But it's unlike Keane to have a dig at Haaland, isn't it? So like, it's very standard behaviour from Roy Keane.
Yeah, a classic leg breaker. There. I mean, I just don't think that it's worth dignifying it. Like, it's the kind of thing you say because you need to say something like silly. But I don't know. There's something off with the balance of the back line. Like, I do think that Guardiola has been like pretty good in the first season, but obviously you can't push him on into the final third and rely on him to change the game there. And they don't really have that kind of game-changing player from fullback who I think they could have maybe used against Arsenal.
Yeah, it's not like that season when we had Cancelo just absolutely ripping it up week in.
Yeah, I think if they'd had a player like that on the weekend against Arsenal, then they would have had a bit of that width. But as it was, they weren't able to do that, or maybe they were just too focused on controlling the game in the middle. I don't know. I do think that they're going to have to significantly rejig what this team is going to look like in the coming seasons, because De Bruyne being out for portions of the year or seeing a significant drop in his performance level is happening. It will happen. It's happened the last 2 seasons. It's very unlikely to change when he's 33, so I feel like they felt the loss of Mahrez a lot this season, and if Doku can develop into that, or if they can just have Grealish fully fit or something, then I do think maybe it changes this. But there are interesting squad questions to be answered at Man City, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the summer's going to be very interesting for that as well. Jay, let's give a little bit of our love to Arsenal then. I know this may hurt you as a Chelsea fan. I'm sure Pat will jump in on this as well. Yeah. Firstly, a lot of stick was given to Arsenal for the Man City-Arsenal game for being kind of reserved, very conservative, making it a boring game, essentially. Do you think that was deserved, or do you think essentially they are just playing the remaining games game by game, giving themselves the best chance?
I was thinking about this. It's only rival fans that are calling it boring, and that's because they're viewing it as an entertainment sport, whereas actually football's not an entertainment sport when you're Arsenal and City competing for the title, right? You 100% take a point against City away. I think Arsenal have shown that they've got the best centre-back pairing in the league. I do this season. I think Rice has been the best sort of player in that position. Saka's outstanding. I still think there's a few improvements they can make to that squad, which is quite scary because they're becoming inevitable at this point. But I don't pay much heed to it wasn't entertaining, it's this or it's that. It's a perfectly deserved point against Manchester City. You take it, you bank it, and you keep on moving. And I think for Arsenal, that works best. They've spent years dwelling on bad results or missed opportunities, as we've enjoyed, Zach, over the years, less so for you, Pat. But now Arsenal are back and they're looking really big time. And I think that especially that sort of triptych of Saliba, Gabriel and Rice, that is impeccable. And it deserves full praise from Arteta. I think Rice made the right decision going to Arsenal instead of Chelsea. It seems as though their scouting has been pretty excellent across the board. Even the step in for David Raya, I've liked. A bit of a shame for Ramsdale, who I think is quite a nice guy, but obviously he's not at the Arsenal level that they want to be at, with all due respect to him. So I think Arsenal have actually got it pretty much bang on all season. And I would be quite concerned if I were Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, United, Liverpool, for the next few seasons, because Arsenal are here and they're here to stay.
Yeah, it does seem it. Go on then, Pat. How has this year for you as an Arsenal fan gone better than expected, or considering it looked like you were going to keep improving after last season as well?
Oh, it's way better than expected. I sort of thought this season that we were quite likely to maybe take a little step back. Or at least sort of stay the same level, like look like a sort of low to mid 80 points type team. Because as good as Rice is, like bringing a guy in that position is a huge change in the way that the side plays, as is trying to incorporate Havertz into the Xhaka role. Like essentially Arsenal replaced their midfield in the summer, which is quite a hard thing to do without missing a beat.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously the first half of last season, we looked as good as Man City. The second half, we looked fairly mediocre. We looked like a Champions League side, I guess, like a kind of fourth place team. And the question was, which of these is the real Arsenal? So I was prepared for us to take a step back, especially as well, because our success so far has been built on the backs of 21-year-olds. And 21-year-olds are inconsistent. Like, that is a thing that happens. They have seasons where they stagnate, kind of like Martinelli's had a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not stagnate, maybe that's a bit strong, but like he's plateaued a bit this season. Or they get an injury or whatever it might be. So I was prepared for it to go a lot worse than this. And what I wasn't prepared for is for us to be, on paper, the best team in the league right now. You know, like, we have the best underlying expected goal difference numbers. Our attack is as good as Liverpool's. Our defence is by miles the best in the league. By miles. If you look at the underlying numbers.
Is it 2 goals you've conceded so far since 2024? Four.
Can I ask as well, what happens when Jurriën Timber comes back? Because he's basically going to be a new signing at this point, and from what we saw of him in brief glimpses in Arsenal shirt, he's quality.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting question. It feels like Kivior has been
He's been solid.
But it feels like he's been a bit of a stopgap.
Yeah,
like, I don't think that was Arteta's like vision for what he was going to be in the long term. And it's good that Arsenal have been able to roll teams over with him playing in that position, kind of as a makeshift left back or left centre back, however you want to see it. I think Timber will probably largely play there, but having him and Zinchenko and Kivior and Tomiyasu as options, I just think there are loads of minutes to be had. Like, White has had to play a lot.
Yeah. Been fantastic.
He's outstanding.
But when he's not there, you're like, what is there? And also, again, I think the midfield is going to need a rejig this summer. It looks like Arsenal will try and sign a midfielder, but Jorginho is old. And I would
he's never necessarily been like reliant on pace, has he? Like, he's always been slow.
Yeah. Sure. But you also, when a guy's running down his contract, you don't want to make that guy like the centerpiece of your team.
Very true.
You're trying to phase him out. And Arsenal don't really have that game controller. I'm not sure Rice really is quite that guy. He's more dynamic than that, which is great, but he's perhaps less controlled than that, which is not as good. That's what Jorginho is really great at. Yeah. So having Timber to step into midfield but a bit more naturally might be interesting. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what Arteta's goal is there. I think his hope is that Timber will be able to spot White sometimes and then also sometimes be a more defensively sound version of Zinchenko. Yeah. But it's not a bad problem to have. However, I agree with you. Like, there's surgery to be done on the squad. And I think in the Man City game, having a fully fit Martinelli, for example, would have been the thing that Arteta really, really wanted. Because if you're going to try and play on the counter-attack, Martinelli's kind of our guy for that. And you just didn't have him available.
And finally, if it ends in 8 games' time with Arsenal third out of the top 3, is that a slight disappointment?
I think it depends what happens in the Champions League. Okay, if Arsenal go out of the course of the Champions League and then finish third, that's a disappointment. If Arsenal get to the semis, get to the final, and end up finishing third in the league, that's fine. I think at this point, given that Liverpool do have a points advantage, you've just got to put in a good showing yourself.
Yeah.
If Arsenal win the year and they won all their remaining games, but they drew away at Spurs, I'm not going to cry that much about that. I think that's kind of fair enough. And then I would say the league was not won or lost in those 8 games. It was won or lost. West Ham, Fulham, those matches.
Fair enough. Well, there we have it. That is who will win the Premier League. Now, let's move down then to the top 4. Now, obviously, this is a really interesting one this year because 5th place does look like, we'll see, but it does look very much like the highest percentage that the Premier League will get an extra Champions League place. So 5th place could be a Champions League spot, which kind of makes it then a little bit more redundant. Because the gap between Manchester United and Spurs being in 5th at the moment, is 9 points. Obviously, again, Man United play Chelsea this evening, so that could slightly change after we finish this video. But it does kind of seem like the Champions League places, we know who's going to be there. Unless there is a miracle from United. And to be quite honest, they've been having miracles all season. Because the way United, and this might sound harsh to United fans, I don't even know how they're 6th. And they shouldn't be playing in Europe next year.
No way.
With the way their performances are, the way they've played this season, they shouldn't be in Europe next year. But they've somehow just managed to get to where they are. I think even some United fans have looked at it and gone, how are we sick? How have we got a chance of Champions League football? But it does currently look like they'll be in the Europa League places. Aston Villa, it feels almost guaranteed a Champions League place, which is a hell of a job by Unai Emery, isn't it, Jay? Yeah,
it's an incredible job, and it's testament to him, I think, to go from Arsenal and then excel now at Aston Villa. He's done a wonderful job. Ollie Watkins is a supreme talent. I think he could play for a quote-unquote bigger team, but I don't see really anywhere better than playing for Villa for him right now. I will say on Manchester United, I've thought about it a lot. I actually interviewed Sam from the United stand yesterday, and what's going on with United sort of reminds me that there's intangible aspects of football that actually do exist. It's like sometimes when you've got a really good captain, although a captain doesn't always matter, having a good captain is really helpful. And I think that there are some narratives around United, such as last-minute winners or scraping through, that has become so embedded into the fabric of what that club is and what it does that they've been able to somehow do it. Because I agree with you. I think they've been, give or take, as bad as Chelsea, not quite as bad as Chelsea, but they've certainly not been good enough to be within this group. And I think that, like you say, the fact that there's quite a considerable gap between them and Tottenham sort of is testament to that. It's actually a shame for West Ham to be below United currently. I think they've been better. Villa have done a marvellous job, and I hope what we see from Villa is more intelligent signings. I hope they can keep hold of some of their key players. I actually think they will. The only player I think that can leave that's a key player is Douglas Luiz, potentially, and if he's got Champions League football, I don't know why you'd want to leave anyway. It's a huge club. The fans are incredible. They've done an amazing job, and why would you not want to keep that together? And if they follow in the sort of footsteps of Leverkusen in aiming to keep their ship steady and together as best they can, I think Villa next season will be just as dangerous, if not more so, if they make the right signing or two. But yeah, credit to Villa, credit to West Ham. Actually, I think they've been good, especially in Europe. But Manchester United, how they've got in there is a mystery to me. Oh, you can say that again. From a Spurs point of view, Pat, solid season, right? Brought in a new manager, lost Harry Kane, who was so crucial to the way they played their football, and have done a lot better than I think people expected them to do this season. A lot of credit, to be fair, has already been given to Ange throughout the season. I feel like he's been given enough respect for what he's done. But I think for Spurs fans, they would take this happily. If you said at the beginning of the season, you'll be getting Champions League football next year, whether that is 4th or 5th place, after losing the likes of Harry Kane and having a turgid time with Conte, they would have snapped your hand off for something like this. Yeah, definitely. And also to see the evolution in the style of play. I mean, they play distinctively and attractively now. They've got a bunch of young players who are really exciting to watch. At some point, they're going to have to replace Son. It might be next season, but it looks like that'll be quite a difficult job, they've found solutions in other areas that are incredibly exciting, like Van de Ven, Udogie. I love Sarr. These are guys who have essentially kind of come out of nowhere to fix some major issues for Spurs. Vicario as well, to fix major issues for Spurs. The defense has been a little bit troubling, I would say. Obviously at the beginning of the season, they were really riding high. And since the end of October, the defense has been genuinely quite bad. It's been 3rd or 4th worst in the league by expected goals conceded. And I think that's probably a function of how they play. I don't know what the answer is there, because given that Van de Ven's had a really good season, Udogie's had a really good season, Romero, Porro, you kind of say, what's the X factor to stop that defense being quite so bad? Is it just the press gelling better so those opportunities don't come? Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. Is that not just a counter part of the tactics, right? Because they are so high up the pitch, they are going to concede more chances when they are getting balls over the top. West Ham most recently had a lot of success. I mean, they could have lost that game if Antonio just puts it in. But you don't want to give up quite as much as they have done. Yeah. So when I said before, Liverpool's defense is not great. Liverpool's defense is slightly over 1 XG conceded per game. But it's still the 3rd best in the league. It's significantly better than everybody else's. They take risks defensively to create chances offensively, but it turns into a bit more than their rivals, but not that much. Whereas
for Spurs, it's turning into an awful lot.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not like you look at their centre-backs, you're like, well, these guys are just crap. You just need to upgrade them. So you hope that as the press gels a little bit more, fewer of those out balls find their target and fewer of the balls over the top, like make it to the wingers, and Spurs kind of shore things up. But I think there's so much to be positive about here. I think it's really, really exciting for them. And who deserves for them, Villa? I really do think that's kind of an open question. Like, I think they should be. I don't know. I think it's difficult to know what comes next for them personnel-wise. If I were running Spurs transfers, I think I would have a hard time to know where to focus in the summer. Mm-hmm. But Ange has obviously shown he's a great manager, and I think the club has some of that kind of Pochettino feeling where everybody's in step behind the coach, which I like to see.
I'll be interested for it next season when, they've set themselves now as Champions League contenders.
Sure.
They've now got to battle with being in the Champions League. And they don't necessarily have a very deep squad, really. Obviously, Dragoson was alone, or did they buy him permanently? I can't quite remember.
They bought him.
Yeah, but anyway, it'll be interesting to see what the next expectation is from there and how things develop. I do want to get back to United because I basically just chatted a bunch about them and then let Jay say a few words. Because their games remaining, Chelsea tonight, Liverpool, Bournemouth, Sheffield United, Burnley, Palace, Arsenal, Brighton. Not easy.
No.
Right, and they want to be in, of course, they want to have a European place next year. But the difference between 6th on 48 points, which is Manchester United currently, and then 12th, which is Chelsea, is 8 points here. And I can see several of those games.
Wow, so smaller than the gap between them and 5th.
Yes.
Yikes.
So exactly. And I can see a few of those games there being very difficult for Manchester United. Again, they've managed to get it over, like the Brentford game most recently. What was it? 31 shots Brentford had. How they didn't score more than one goal and very much kind of looked like at one point they were going to nick 3 points, very much steal it. Would have definitely been a robbery. United aren't safe here. Like we have mentioned here, they have been very lucky this year to be where they are right now. But there is still a world where they could drop off very quickly, Pat, and see themselves drop all the way to 8th, 9th.
Yeah, and I think like Newcastle are significantly better than United. I would not be surprised to see that happen. But I also think, I don't know, that when you talk to United fans, you never know how much of a lunatic you're talking to. But generally speaking, I think most United fans have been like pretty straightforward that they're like, we have no idea how we are where we are.
Yeah.
There's the odd one who's like, no, Ten Hag is doing a great job and it's all going to come together. But basically everyone is like, yeah, we've just got a few good players who've managed to pull it out of the bag, like Garnacho, Bruno, Højlund. Like these guys in key moments have done something. Onana as well. Yeah. These guys have done something in key moments and that's been the difference. I mean, the same as that Liverpool match that we were talking about in the Cup. That was carnage. That was like if you put somebody in charge of the team who like previously coached like volleyball or something, like no one knew what was going on, but chaos is kind of a situation in which that team can thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I when you guys were saying you think that, you know, they haven't been quite as bad as Chelsea, I think they've been worse than Chelsea. I think they've been significantly worse than Chelsea.
I don't know how often you watch Chelsea, because it's been rough. It's been rough.
But Man United, like when I watched them last night, I didn't even know what they're trying to do. Let alone like what they are actually doing. Yeah, the fact their goal difference is 0, I think they're lucky to be in that position. And when you look at the sides they're competing with, that goal difference in itself shows you where they are relative to those. Yeah. You know, Spurs, Villa, 17-18, Newcastle plus 12. Like that's quite a big difference. So I don't know. I think it'd be worth maybe thinking about a little flutter on Newcastle finishing above United at this stage.
Okay,
8 games to go.
Very interesting. Just looking there at West Ham as well. 55 goals conceded this season. I think we know where Moyes, if he is still there to be fair next season, needs to be fixing up there. Yeah, I think Jay mentioned them done very well this season whilst battling in Europe as well to kind of be where they are. And it feels like every other week West Ham fans are either claiming that Moyes is the greatest or claiming that he needs to get out of the club and never return to the Olympic Stadium. Well, let's go to the other European places then, because this is really interesting. As I mentioned earlier, with the extra Champions League place, which we're going to assume is what's going to happen, and that Aston Villa and Spurs take the Champions League spots.
But Villa could, okay, just before you go on. With all the coefficient stuff that's going on as well, if the results break the right way, you might end up in a situation where Aston Villa are playing in the Conference League final for essentially simultaneously a place in the Europa and a place in the Champions League.
Mad.
You know, like they could say they're
Yeah,
fifth,
yeah.
then they might need to win the Conference League final to ensure that England gets the place in the coefficient that gets them the Champions League spot, which would then put them in the Champions League. Like it's genuinely, it's such a ludicrous situation that this could break in 100 different ways.
It's really bonkers, and because you know what also happens is whoever wins the FA Cup, if they are finishing outside of the top 8, they take the extra Europa League place as well. So there's a few different ways this could work out. It's very, very odd. But essentially, 8th would get the Conference League. And then 7th and 6th would take Europa. 5th and 4th would take the other Champions League remaining spots that are available. And so let's talk about the other teams here. This is where we can bring in a little bit about Chelsea as well. Newcastle, we mentioned, Brighton, Wolves, Bournemouth, Chelsea. I've got Fulham here. Who knows? Maybe a miracle could happen for them. But again, after the result against Nottingham Forest, I'm not so sure. Chelsea here, 2 games in hand, at least, possibly 3. Well, 3 games in hand, but a lot of other teams here also have a game in hand. Those games in hand are Spurs and Arsenal, so not necessarily the bankers there that people talk about game in hands being. It's very tight. So yeah, between Chelsea, who are on 40 points, playing Manchester United today, to 7th, where West Ham are, is just 5 points in it. If Chelsea beat Manchester United today, they would jump all the way to 10th by goal difference behind Brighton. So how do you think it's going to play out? Who will be getting the 8th spot of Conference League football here with all these teams here, Jay?
Firstly, I don't see Chelsea getting it. I'll be honest. I think the games in hand is proof of the. I think it proves positive the argument that you'd rather have points on the board than games in hand. Yeah. And Chelsea have struggled to get points on the board all season for myriad reasons. I think Pat's right in his assessment of Newcastle. Newcastle are the best team in that bunch.
Group, yeah.
I actually not overly convinced on Brighton. I don't see that Brighton have been necessarily miles better than, say, a team like Bournemouth or Wolves. I think Wolves have had a really impressive season. West Ham, like you say, sitting in 7th. Again, it's worth mentioning they lost their captain and best player. And I think David Moyes has done a fairly impressive job, although fans aren't overly happy. I do think it will be Newcastle that gets that position. I think Harvey Barnes is looking strong. Alexander Isak looks like he could turn into one of the very best forwards in the world. Just watching him play is he's absolutely exceptional. Newcastle have a lot to do in the summer. They've got a lot of fixing, a lot of tweaking, a lot of mending to do. Actually, I think a lot of these teams in this bunch have work to do. But I personally, I can see Newcastle being the final team to claim that position, because Chelsea film with no confidence. Wolves, I think, look as though they're just coming to the end of their form. They've been strong, they've been convincing, but they just look a little tired, a little leggy, playing, I can't remember the name of the striker that started the other day, but he hadn't started at all before. I like Bournemouth, but I don't think Bournemouth are going to push on, and Fulham are too up and down to really challenge anywhere else. So I think, it's going to be Newcastle.
Yeah, Bournemouth have a very tough end to the season. They've got to play Villa, United, I guess, Wolves, Brighton, Arsenal, and Chelsea last day of the season. Brentford is also in there. We'll get onto them in a little bit. Pat, I think you could probably agree, if it was one of these teams, it'd probably be Newcastle to get that 8th spot. But let's talk a little bit about Chelsea as well.
Okay.
Poch most recently had some very interesting comments, I think. He said about some of his players that a lot of them are playing in their comfort zones at the moment. I saw a few Chelsea fans talking about how, because of them, there being so many Chelsea signings and them wanting to impress on the pitch, and Poch being quite good at, depends if you see it as a positive or a negative, but being very good at, if a player has a good 20 minutes, if he's brought off of the bench, then he starts the next game. But then that possibly leads to a little bit of selfishness between players, trying to make sure they get into the headlines. They're the ones that come off with a bit more credit in the bank by having a good moment in the game, which then in general leads to a worse team performance, especially in the attacking third. How do we feel this can go? I mean, again, if Chelsea beat Manchester United, suddenly I feel like the the headlines all change again. It becomes a little bit more positive.
It's not been since 2017.
Yeah,
November 2017, Chelsea last beat United in the Premier League.
Records meant to be broken, mate.
It's true. It's a tough ask. It's a tough ask.
How are we feeling, Pat?
I've been generally more positive on Chelsea for most of the season, I think. I do look at the run of fixtures they have, though, and I do not feel confident. I mean, Man United, sure. Sheffield United, basically equivalent quality teams.
Everton is not going to be... Chelsea don't take 3 points.
Everton's tough.
Everton game.
Everton's tough. Yeah. Brighton, beatable, but not easy. Then Arsenal, Spurs, Villa, West Ham. And then the last 8, Bournemouth. I mean, Bournemouth aren't a joke. So I just look at that and I think, I don't know. I don't know about it. I think that really... I don't pay that much attention to stuff that Pochettino says at the moment because I think Pochettino basically needs to say what it takes to get enough time in the job for this to come together. And if he can just stay in the job for, well, under normal circumstances, I'd say if he can stay in the job for another kind of 6 months, I think that he'll be okay. But here, I think he's going to lose Gallagher in the summer. And that's such a huge kind of, I guess, it's the glue in his midfield. I don't know if things really recover from that. Like, honestly, I just don't. I find it hard to be positive about Chelsea. Like, not just because I hate them, but also because I don't know what they do this summer. I don't know what happens. Like this, it's just like complete pie in the sky. Like, yeah, great. If you finish 8th, you get Conference League football. You do that next season with a depleted squad, not an enhanced squad, but a depleted one. It makes me concerned.
Well,
I know I say this every week. Every week I'm like, Chelsea might
true.
cease to function as a club.
It's true.
And I know that that's like, fantasy fiction to some degree because it's just what I want to happen. But I truly don't know what you're going to get from Chelsea any week at the moment. I think the fans expecting more is perhaps like underplaying the difficulty of the enterprise for both the players and the coach. On the other hand, there's no real prospect of things getting better because unless they do get huge overpays for a few fringe players this summer, they're not really going to be able to add to this squad.
The only way it gets better, but I don't necessarily think there is no way of adding to the squad personally. Like, essentially, the only way it gets better is the players you have bought improve, like, or they gel together, or they clicked, or whatever it is. They suddenly become the worth the money you spent for them. And for instance, Madrid,
that's kind of possible.
70 million or whatever it was. Like, he has had moments, but will we see him become that 70 million pound player? No. If we do, that's great. Enzo, if he ends up being worth the fee, brilliant. Like, these guys do become worth their fee. It becomes a lot easier to see how Chelsea can get out of this.
I don't think you even need that. You need Nkunku. If you have Nkunku and James fit all season, that is such a big difference. Even though I like Malo Gusto a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. No, but my point is being like, that's where, like, Chelsea can't keep going into the summer and going, okay, now we're going to spend another 300 million on these academy kids or these young guys who can become really good eventually. Eventually, the young guys that you bought 2 seasons ago need to become good. Jay, I'm sure you've spent a long time this season talking about Chelsea, but how do you feel right now in the position where we are? Because I would say it's kind of a very up and down this season, I feel.
Yeah, there's many shades of grey. I think there's something to consider is firstly, his expectation is that Chelsea over the last 2 decades have been one of the most successful clubs in Europe. And I don't think that fans should give up those expectations. However, there needs to be a sense of, okay, we're here and in 4 years' time, we're going to be here. I've mentioned on various other shows and recordings that I think it would have been helpful for Todd Boehly and co to have come out and said to the Chelsea fans, okay, with this new project, we're going to aim to finish 8th now, 6th next year, and then push 5th and 4th onwards. And then even if Chelsea fans don't like that, they've got something to buy into that's visible, that, that over time you can maybe see that process. And Todd Boehly saying to Forbes this week about how fans essentially need to trust the process. He's not wrong, but equally, if you're going to walk on ice, you might as well dance. And Chelsea aren't looking particularly great, and it seems as though we're tiptoeing around the edge constantly. There's zero cohesive mentality. I know that lots of fans dislike the fact that Poch doesn't really go over and engage with them, but if I was Poch, maybe I wouldn't too. There's been various complaints about Poch from journalists when he turns up late to press conferences, that kind of thing, and I think that those standards that he has, if they drop slightly, and it's understandable because the Chelsea job is essentially a poison chalice. They need to. Poch needs to get back in order. There's structure that's needed at every single level of the club. And actually, going back to personnel, Chelsea haven't played what we would see on paper as their ideal 11 once this season.
Very true.
Nkunku, I think, was meant to be the star guy. And that would then allow Sterling to not be the star guy, and then he's better as that. He shouldn't ever be the senior guy. I think Reece James not having, in my opinion, when he's fit, the best right back in the world, outside of Trent, I guess, is really unhelpful. We forget that Chelsea paid, 75 million for Wesley Fofana, who is basically non-existent.
He's legitimately not had.
He's been injured all season. I think Disasi.
He's not been fit once.
No, I know It's
not even all season. It's since you bought him.
Yeah.
The second he arrived at the club, his leg fell off.
He's made of paper mache. So we have to sort of work out how to deal with all of those things. There's also the expectation of the midfield and the cohesiveness. Pat mentioned Gallagher there. I will say that. I do see the value in Gallagher. I really like him as a player. I'm not one of those Chelsea fans that wants him sold. However, there's been multiple times this season where I've been watching us play, and I would rather see Chukwuemeka in that position because he's really quite good.
Another player that's got injured?
Another player that's been consistently injured. And actually, I think he would play regularly had he stayed fit. And then ultimately it boils down to the fact that where would Chelsea be without Cole Palmer? It would be really bad. It would be really bad. Pat's smile tells you how bad it would be. So there's been so many different facets at the Chelsea Football Club that don't align. We're certainly 5 to 10 years away from being consistent challengers again. That doesn't mean these players can't fulfill their potential. It doesn't mean that we can't invest. But as we spoke about prior to recording too, Chelsea's main priority actually is outgoings. And that needs to be done perfectly in order to negate what financial troubles that we'll talk about when we come to Everton and Nottingham Forest later. Chelsea 200 mils worth of players they need to get rid of. It's doable, but it's not easy, and it needs to be done before the 30th of June as well. So it's tight for Chelsea right now, and it's not an enjoyable process. But there's this weird aspect also, which is there's a very, very small chance that come the end of the season Chelsea are in a European position and have won an FA Cup. It's not going to happen because Chelsea might lose. Well, certainly going to lose to Manchester City.
That's no, man.
But there's that possibility that keeps you locked in, which is, actually, if we get it together, it can be quite good. But
I think that's one of the things, right, where for one of the most annoying, frustrating things, I'm just venting here. I think this season is that you have seen moments and you've seen parts where you go, oh, okay, I can understand how this can work. Or I can see this player being really good, or I can see this player fulfilling his potential and helping this team here massively. It's just those moments are very few and far between. But then in between that, you've had so many sloppy and mistakes happen. And I think because it's such a young squad here and there is no experience and not much leadership either, normally, right, when, for instance, let's talk about, I don't know, say Man City bring in Rico Lewis, right? Rico Lewis can make a mistake or two and be okay because everyone else around him is incredible and super experienced and also been part of this system for ages. When out of the 11 players on the pitch, 9 of them are brand new and have no idea what's wanted of them, when they make the mistakes, you're seeing them all over the pitch because they're all just figuring things out at the same time. If it was a case where it was I don't know, it was the era of John Terry Lampard and that, and say they'd brought in someone like a Madrid or someone like Jackson, you give them time. It's okay, well, you're only seeing that one mistake once or twice, not every other minute. But yes, there we go. That is our European places. I think we're gonna put West Ham, Newcastle as our final European spots.
I'm putting Newcastle higher. I think West Ham. So I think West Ham and United slip down.
Okay, and then who do you think maybe comes up? Or do you think they'll still get European places, West Ham United?
I don't know.
Okay, well, we'll see.
I'd love to see United fall out of it entirely because I think that's richly deserved.
What I'd love to see? Wolves. Go all the way to an 8th spot.
That's as crazy.
Well, it's only how many points? 2 points from happening, Pat. So we'll see.
I've never forgiven Wolves for the Mick McCarthy era. So
it would maybe be Gary O'Neill manager of the season.
Yeah,
I can do that as well.
It's been fantastic.
He has indeed. Okay, then let's move on to the relegation zone because all these areas we've spoken about are tight. Very tight. So relegation right now, Brentford on 28 points, and then Luton Town, who are 18th in the final spot for relegation. I'm going to say Sheffield United, gonzo. Sorry, lads. Unless Burnley have a miracle, they're probably gone as well. Yeah. But yeah, Sheffield United on 15, Burnley on 19, Luton Town on 22, and then Brentford on 15th on 28. Forest are on 25, Everton on 26. So it's really that last spot there, which obviously has basically 3 points in it to stay up or down at the moment. And if you look at the games that are remaining, Pat, for someone like Luton, I think they've got a chance. Especially as they've got to play Everton, which is massive. Obviously, Luton have to play Bournemouth, not easy. Man City, not easy. Brentford is also actually quite big, to be fair. Wolves, Everton, West Ham, and Fulham. Whereas someone like Everton have to play Burnley, really big game for Burnley, that as well. Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, very big as well. Liverpool, Brentford, Luton, Sheffield United, Arsenal. I really want Luton to stay up. I don't know if it's just kind of like plucky Luton and all that kind of stuff, but I think they've done a really impressive job this season at being a team that is tough to beat. Even Arsenal yesterday. People would have probably, at the beginning of the season, had thought Arsenal will roll over a team like Luton. Like, there's no chance about it. But that game yesterday was not an easy game for Arsenal, and I think they were kind of happy to just get a 2-0 win and take it.
Sure, but on the other hand, Arsenal played a heavily rotated midfield.
Yeah, very true.
And still did win comfortably.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem for Luton. Like, yes, they can go out there and they can kind of give you a game, but they are still among the 3 worst teams in the league. Like, these 3 teams that are in the bottom 3 are the 3 worst teams by expected goal difference. They are the 3 worst teams defensively. They're the 3 worst teams by goal difference. 2 of them have the worst attacks in the league, basically, and Luton's is better, but it's still not great. I think they are where they are deservedly, and you say that's a big game, Luton versus Everton. But if Luton won that game against Everton, they'd still be behind Everton.
Yeah.
And Everton have a game in hand as well. And admittedly, games in hand are worth less when you're crap. But it's better to have the possibility of points than definitely not to have the points. I just look at these 3 sides and I just don't. I mean, Burnley and Sheffield United, in my opinion, are gone, bar a huge miracle. And Luton, I think they're gonna go as well. Brentford are nowhere near this, in my opinion. Brentford are way better than this. I also think Everton are way better than this. Actually, as a side, I think Everton are significantly better than this, as shown by the fact that they've had a points deduction and they're still way ahead of these teams. You know, like, they wouldn't even be on this section of the table that you've copied and pasted here. So I just think I find it very, very hard to see. I find it hard to be optimistic. Okay. And Luton all season, we've spoken of them, quite fondly.
Yeah, like a pat on the back. Well done.
But they're a team that we are fond of because they're not really a threat, and it would be such an enormous upset for them to stay up. I think that, for me, the hope is almost gone. It shouldn't be for them, but I don't think it's happening, Zach.
Yeah, no. Look, if you just look at the budgets that Luton had compared to everyone else,
yeah, definitely,
it is insane that they even got here in the first place. Joe, let's talk a little bit about Nottingham Forest, because they've also had a point deduction, 4 points. Now that is currently under appeal as well, so it could possibly be reduced. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. But let's say they do stick this 4 point deduction, which is currently keeping them on 25 points. They did just get a win by absolutely battering Fulham as well. Yeah. They've got to play Spurs, Wolves, Everton, Man City, Sheffield United, Chelsea, Burnley. And if you look at their squad, their attack is really, one, good fun, but also really strong.
Yeah.
Elanga, Callum Hudson-Odoi, who are coming into form. Gibbs White, who I also think has picked up a little bit of form. Chris Wood is playing at the moment, but Awoniyi has been very good as well this season. How do we feel about Forest?
I think Forest is certainly too good to go down. I don't like the hiring of Nuno, I'll be honest. I don't think that made much sense. Sure. But the talent that they have is certainly enough to keep them there. I think you can see with the result over Fulham, Morgan Gibbs-White was running the show, and to have a player of that calibre, I think gives you quite a good chance of staying up. I think Callum Hudson-Odoi for $3 million is it's not even a Chelsea bias because I didn't think that he was good enough to be at Chelsea, but he's certainly good enough to be at Forest. Actually, maybe ironically, he's good enough to be at Chelsea right now. I like Taiwo Awoniyi. I think he's a really impressive Premier League level player. I think Chris Wood has proven himself to be a more than capable sort of stand-in backup option.
Definitely.
He's a consummate professional right there. And actually, if you go throughout the squad, I really like some of their players. I like Toffolo, for example. I think he's a really, really solid Premier League player. So I don't see Forest being in too much trouble. And actually, when you look at the fixture list, there are a few difficult games: Spurs, Wolves, Man City. But they need, 4 points, maybe 6 points to stay up, because Sheffield have got a minus 52 goal difference now. And with all due respect, that is a stinker.
Yeah,
so Sheffield are absolutely gone. I don't think Burnley are going to stay up. Luton, we've enjoyed the sound of their bark. I think their bite has not been anywhere near as loud as their bark has, or as vicious, sorry. And I don't see them staying in the league. And it's a shame, because we all like the sort of pluckiness of little Luton being there. And actually, credit to them, what they've been able to do is change what the perception was around them, which is Luton, going away to Luton, you're going to get 3 points, no drama. But actually now going away to Luton is not that easy, and they've given big teams games. So,
and also you think about, like, if they do go down, the parachute payments that would help them financially could see them come back up very quickly.
See, I will say just quickly, I don't know if any of those three will come back up next season. I'm not sure. I really don't know. But Burnley maybe. Sheffield, I'm not overly convinced, and Luton.
Well, Luton were kind of fortunate to come up in the first place, right? Like, it was very much a very interesting story. I mean, Sheffield United, we say this about Sheffield United kind of for the last couple of years, and then they do go down, they start playing incredible football, and they back up, and it all goes to I can't think of the word, shit. But I think the only really interesting thing for Everton is, Everton now, I think, are on a 13 winless streak. The longest streak they've had since 1957, I think, exactly. And it might change because their next game is Burnley, and it might change after that because their next game is Chelsea. So it could change there. And I think
these
that
are easy
kind
matches,
of win.
Zach.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I am in agreement. Unless things were to really go Pete Tong for Forest or Everton, I do think the three promoted teams will be the three that go back down. But let us know what you guys think in the comments below of that, and where all those teams and your team will finish so far in the Premier League season. Let's quickly touch upon a few other things then as well, for predictions of this season, how it will end. Top goal scorer. Bit of a boring top goal scorer this year. Last year, we saw records being broken, 30 plus. Currently, Erling Haaland top of the table with 18 goals. We've then got Salah, Solanke, Watkins on 16, Son, Bowen, Isaac on 15, Phil Foden on 14, Palmer and Saka on 13. Does it just feel like probably Haaland or Salah again, Pat?
Yeah. A lot of the guys are there. I don't know. I might back Salah on this one. Just because I think that Haaland's fitness has not been tremendous, and I think that City I think are just going to conserve him for the Champions League. Like, assuming they go through these games, like they potentially got 5 games left in the Champions League. I think that at a certain point, if they're still third in a couple of matches' time, Pep will be like, guys, like, we're just going to accept that the league is kind of gone, and we're going to conserve Haaland for the Champions League. So I don't know. I mean, obviously he could easily still just like get a couple of hat tricks and finish top. But I think Salah now, last 8 games of the season, really huge chance to win the league. Quite an easy fixture list. You just got to imagine that he turns it on, right?
Yeah. No, very true. I think he's. You know what it will be? It'll be whoever wins. Well, to be fair, even Arsenal. It's crazy to think, actually, when you look at it. Arsenal's top goal scorer is Saka with only 13. Competing with some of the other boys. But I do agree. I think if it is a Liverpool title winning charge, it will be Salah. If it is a Man City title winning charge, I think Haaland. I do think you are right in the fact that, like, Haaland can just have games where he's as they've spoken about lots recently, not really in it, but does just get a hat-trick here and then a hat-trick there, and suddenly he's got 6 extra goals, which is quite hard to compete to. Jay, anything to add on the top goal scorer?
I will say, actually, that if you look across the top 5 leagues in Europe, it's not been high scoring for individuals generally across the board. Harry Kane's an outlier in the Bundesliga with 31, but then you've got Grassi with 23 and then Lois Openda with 19, so they're in the teens predominantly. You look at Serie A, it's only Lautaro that's got plus 20.
Wow.
Haaland would have plus 20 had he not been injured. It's and in Spain too, 2, Bellingham's still top with 16 goals, right?
Wow.
So it's not as though actually there's been a serious focal point at many teams. I think Lautaro's been outstanding at Inter. I think Haaland would be great if he'd stayed fit all season. And Harry Kane's obviously Harry Kane. But I don't think across the board teams have relied necessarily on one player specifically. That teams have been able to get goals from everywhere, and I see how that sort of played out in the Premier League too. But I'm inclined to agree with you guys. I think Salah will top it if Liverpool come out on top. He looks like he's absolutely desperate for another Premier League. Bless him. So
bless him.
Yeah. So I think it's most likely going to be Mo Salah.
Okay. Well, let's jump. You speak about Europe. Let's jump into Europe then and talk about the Champions League and other competitions. Patrick, Van Straten, and Jay. Who will be winning the Champions League? Pat, take us away.
Well, this is obviously massively affected by the draw, which put the 4 best teams on one side of the draw.
Yeah. So much more fun.
And the 4 crap teams on the other side. Which means that, the likelihood is that PSG or Barcelona will be in the final. Because I think Dortmund are terrible. I think Atletico Madrid are slightly less terrible. But I think PSG and Barcelona are significantly better than both those sides. If it weren't for the fact they're on the same side of the draw, I would go City Arsenal 1-2 for the Champions League. Just on raw quality of the sides. Like, I know that we all say, look, Real Madrid, they just do it in the Champions League. But they haven't actually been all that great in the Champions League, though I'd say they've been better there than they have domestically. Bayern in the Champions League have been legitimately not very impressive at all. They came out of a group where they were given a run for their money by a bad Man United side and by Galatasaray. And Arsenal were terrible in the round of 16, so that's a question mark. But I think they were just really conservative. That should help them against these better sides. And I think that draw away at Man City at the weekend is absolutely the blueprint for how Arsenal go deep in this competition.
Okay.
It's the way that Chelsea won a couple of seasons ago.
Certainly.
It's just like, we grind you into dust. We make it absolutely miserable. We defend them. And then we go to the Emirates and we try and get something.
Well, first game is at the Emirates.
And with no Bayern fans there as well, which is an interesting one.
Yes.
So I think that's kind of an interesting position. But even if it's close going back to Munich, I do think that Arsenal don't need to be too scared, given that they've had basically the hardest fixture in world football this last weekend, and they didn't really look that phased. It wasn't like they got that lucky going through it, So I don't know. I'm not saying that I think they're going to win it, but I would still say Man City are favourites, though I think Real Madrid are an interesting matchup for City. Anybody could win any of those fixtures on that side of the draw. But if you made me bet just like on the data and ignoring that I'm an Arsenal fan, I would go Arsenal through over Bayern. I would go Man City through over Real Madrid.
Arsenal,
and
City,
I'd probably go
semis.
PSG and Atleti on the other side.
Okay. Would you agree, Jay, with that?
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that. I will say with Bayern Munich, they're a bit similar to yourself, Zach, when you do an FD quiz. Head's gone. Head's gone at Bayern Munich. Their domestic season's over. They are going to indulge in many a change in the summer. I think that they're holding out for a solid Champions League performance, but Arsenal are, I think, a step ahead.
Okay, so if we're saying then Arsenal meet Man City in the semis, Jay, we're saying PSG meet Atletico in the semis of that tie. Yeah. Have I put that wrong? Is it PSG Barca?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
That's right.
So let's say PSG meet Atleti in that tie. Who wins that tie, and then what is the final, and who wins the final?
It's really tough. You don't want to play Atletico in a final or a semi-final, to be honest with you. They are one of those grind you down kind of teams. I do like PSG this season. I like what Luis Enrique is doing, albeit the Mbappe story might cloud where they're at. But I do think that it's going to be one of the teams on that sort of City, Arsenal, Bayern side. If I had to be really bolshy and decide who I think is going to win right now,
it's so hard.
It's
right?
really hard
it's
because
really hard.
My head tells me it's going to be Real Madrid. Honestly, because they just kind of do that. But actually, I'll stick with what I said off camera, which is I really do fancy Arsenal because Arsenal are really good.
Arsenal to beat Man City in the...
I don't think it's undoable. And I think, look at Chelsea, how Chelsea have got at City before. Arsenal can play Man City and go toe-to-toe. And it's again, going back to those intangibles about stepping up.
And City over 2 games, I do think you can get them. I really do.
Arsenal have kept 2 clean sheets in their games
yeah.
against City this season, which is bananas.
Yeah, it's crazy. I really, and the teams on the other side of the draw aren't going to stand a chance against Arsenal. If Arsenal are feeling confident, if they feel themselves, I personally, I'm going to back Arsenal, and that really hurts as a Chelsea fan.
Okay, well, that is our Champions League winner. We'll also talk about the Europa.
I'm going to get slaughtered in the comments.
I just want to go into a sort of a deep coma for 6
Also,
months.
in Wembley
Wake up after the final.
Yeah.
In Wembley, the final as well, which is would be huge. Let's talk about the Europa League and Conference League then really quickly. AC Milan versus Roma, Bayer Leverkusen versus West Ham on that side, and Benfica versus Marseille, Liverpool versus Atalanta. Does feel like it maybe a Bayer Liverpool final there.
Cool.
I think would be really interesting. Xabi Alonso taking it over Klopp. And then not going there, or only to go to Real Madrid the next season.
Yeah, 100%.
Would be beautiful, wouldn't it? But yeah, Pat, really quickly, what do you think of those?
I think Milan-Roma is a really hard one to call. I don't know. I might go Roma. Then Leverkusen, Benfica-Marseille. I honestly cannot give you a prediction for that. But I think probably the two best sides left in it are Liverpool, Leverkusen, and I think I would go Liverpool. I think maybe Leverkusen to lose their first game of the season in the final of the Europa League against Liverpool.
Wow. Okay, and then Jay, onto the conference. Villarreal, Olympiacos, Fenerbahce, Victoria Pilsen versus Fiorentina, Club Brugge, PAOK. Who's winning the Conference League?
I would like Fiorentina to win it because I like Fiorentina. I think they're a beautiful club, and it would be nice to see them win some European silverware. But I think, much like I believe it's it will not be a good look on Liverpool if Liverpool don't win the Europa League. I do think Aston Villa are the strongest team in the Conference League by a mile. The resources as well sort of take them above and beyond. And if they can keep everybody fit, and if I was Aston Villa, actually, I'd be throwing all my eggs into this basket because winning silverware is a really beautiful thing. And
definitely.
Villa aren't going to have. Maybe realistically aren't going to have too many chances at really getting to a major final in the coming few years, and we've been really complimentary of Villa too. So I'm backing it on Villa to win there, and Liverpool definitely have to win the Europa League. It'll be quite an embarrassment if they don't.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'm sure all the people in the comments are saying we are very English biased. But
I did say Fiorentina.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, fair play. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk really quickly. Let's talk about the Championship. The 3 teams coming up. Very tight there for the playoffs. It does seem like the top 3 we know for sure. Ipswich Town, Leeds United, Leicester City. What a story for Ipswich. I mean, they were League One last year. Brought in McKenna, the top of the Championship as it stands right now on 87 points. Leeds on 86. Leicester on 85. Leicester have definitely... If they let it slip, Leicester, from where they were, it's a real shame. But the other ones, the playoff teams, Southampton, West Brom, Norwich, Coventry, Preston, all really interesting. Middlesbrough as well, for who can get that final playoff spot as well between them, because it does seem like Southampton will take one. And the other 2, I think West Brom will probably take one as well. Then the other one, we'll see. But from those 3, 2 of them ex-Premier League, one of them much better than the other one in Leicester City. 3 of them even with Leeds United as well, How do we feel about who will be coming up here, Jay?
I think Leicester and Leeds are probably going to go through as the top 2. I do like what Ipswich are doing, but I wonder to what extent they can carry it on, although they are currently sat at top of the league. I think Leicester and Leeds as well are interesting teams to look at for if they come up. I don't think they'll be favourites to go back down. And that will be quite a change from what we're used to. And then in terms of playoffs, it'll be whoever is third out of the Ipswich, Leeds, Leicester sort of cummerbund there, and versus Southampton, who I think have been good but not as good as we can see by the points on the board. So that's how I see it playing out. But I still think Leicester might do it, in fairness. They've been wobbling, and Leeds actually are really quite a good side too. And Ipswich have had this amazing fairy tale, and it would be lovely to see them in the Premier League. We can debate how well they will do if they get there next season, but yeah, I'm backing it on Leicester.
Well, Leicester do have a game in hand. If they win that, they go top to 88 points. Yeah, really quick, Pat, then. Ipswich, we're not having back in the Prem, wouldn't it? It's like one of those very old school clubs kind of back there.
Yeah, I mean, I do think they're not nearly as good as Leeds and Leicester, as I think particularly the goals conceded column will tell you. It's like 20 goals conceded more than those two sides. But I think they might get one of these automatic places just because they've got that points advantage on Leeds. And in that case, I don't know. That makes it a bit rough, the playoffs, because I also think Southampton, I think, have been basically as good as Ipswich Town. Mm-hmm. I think Ipswich and Leicester are going to go up automatically, and then Leeds are going to go.
Leeds go through the playoffs,
which I think sucks for Leeds because I actually think they're the best team in the Championship.
Yes, yeah, they've got some great football being played. To be fair, all three of those teams are playing really nice football. And then finally, we're going to zip through the other leagues to give you a league winner. Bundesliga, Bayer Leverkusen. Really quickly, Jay, I'm going to stop saying really quickly. What do you think of Alonso staying at Bayer? Is it just because he's going to go to Real Madrid next season?
I think so. That makes the most sense when you look at it. But also, we've always said for ages, and almost everyone working in football has said for ages, when there's a talented manager or a talented player, wouldn't it be nice if they stayed an extra season? Mm-hmm. Somewhere that's stable, somewhere where actually their influence is only going to get a bit bigger, where his ideas aren't played out at all. There's definitely room for growth and development within that team, which is crazy, right? Considering how well they've done this season. I think Xabi Alonso's an intelligent bloke. We all know, is intelligent footballer, intelligent manager, and it's the right decision, I think, to set Leverkusen. Now, you don't want to be the guy that follows Klopp. I just don't think you want to be the person that follows straight away after a dynastic manager like that. Bayern are going to be looking to gain the ground next season big time, because they don't take losing lightly. But yeah, I think it's a great move from Xabi Alonso, and credit to Leverkusen, because they thoroughly deserve to be top of the Bundesliga, and it looks like they're almost bang on to get a domestic double. And if they add a European trophy to that, which is possible, though we don't think it's going to happen based on our conversation, that's an absolutely outstanding season. And Alonso, one of the best coaches in Europe, and I like that he's staying, and he's going to have doors open to him forever.
It'd be very interesting as well if, say, they do get raided in the summer and Wirtz goes and Frimpong goes, like how he deals with that.
Yeah.
And that might be even another level how we can see him as a coach develop too, which would be really interesting. La Liga, Pat, who's going to win it?
Real Madrid.
Nice. Easy peasy. Serie A, Inter Milan are probably definitely going to win it. Is anyone ever going to go after Inzaghi, Jay?
I think they definitely should do. But then, I was thinking about this on the way up here today, and I've again mentioned this before, is being Premier League fans, or predominantly Premier League fans, we forget that other teams outside of England are really massive. Yeah. And Inter Milan are absolutely huge. They're a huge team. There's few clubs in the world that can rival them in terms of club stature. And Inzaghi's won trophies there and at Lazio too. He's top of the league by an absolute mile. I don't think the competition in the league is the strongest it could be, but I still think Inter Milan are doing exceptionally. I will also say that in terms of managers to look at from Serie A, there's also Thiago Motta, Bologna, who I think it's a 55% win percentage this season. He's got Ferguson, the Scottish captain, there doing really well in midfield. Xerxes is a player that we've known about for a long time, who looks like he's getting a little bit more comfortable. He's certainly not the finished product yet. I think the low scoring aspect of the league helps. It's definitely a little bit more tactical, a little bit more tense, but I can see Thiago Motta being a player that could step up to another big team, and clubs shouldn't look past him necessarily. But Inzaghi is one of the 5 or 6 best managers in the world at this point, but moving from Inter somewhere else isn't that easy, because Inter are a massive, massive institution.
You're not wrong. I'm sure he will stay. And Ligue 1, PSG will be winning that. So it's really interesting for their final Champions League spot. Final European spot. There's a few teams that can be in with that. But there we have it, guys. That is today's episode done. Boys, thank you so much for joining me. Patrick Van Straten, if people at home want to hear more from you, how can they do that?
They can look up my podcast, Unseen Incidents, with me and Pete Dorman, formerly of Football Daily. You can find it on your favourite podcast app. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/PatrickVS. If you subscribe, then you get access to another 2 episodes a month, which means you have an episode every week. You can also send in questions. We are recording this weekend. There will be 2 episodes coming out this weekend.
Love it. And Jay, if they want to see you, where can they go?
Yeah, just come follow me on Twitter at J_Macintosh. I tweet irregularly about football because football makes me quite miserable at the moment. But I do listen to your show, Pat. So go and check out Pat's show, and I'll do your job as well. So make sure you subscribe to Zach's channel. But thank you so much for having me on, man.
Mate, thank you. You've been absolutely class. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, do what Jay said. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. Please donate to me for my marathon. I really, really appreciate it. Get in the comments as well, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.